It's time for Weekly Pulse, your heartbeat to what's trending in sports. This week, we've got a ton of special segments for you. We'll start things off with football and have a frank conversation about race and injustice in the NFL. We'll also look back at the life and legacy of NBA superstar Kobe Bryant. We'll also hear from our friends at MMA Junkie as they preview UFC 257 with Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier on Saturday. But let's kick things off with Lorenzo's Locks. Take a look.
I'm Lorenzo Reyes, and I've been covering the NFL for 7 years now, and it's the playoffs, but Lorenzo's Locks doesn't stop. Here are my 2 bets for the conference championship round. And after last week, let's keep getting after it. And let's start off chronologically, since I don't know how you just can't love both of these matchups. And both lines are smaller and manageable, which is interesting, because all year long, I've thought both conferences to be quite top heavy, and the Packers have that extra edge of playing in icy Green Bay. Though Tom Brady knows a little bit about what that's like, I think that's a taller task for the rest of the team. Aaron Rodgers at home is such a steady play, and after what that offense did to the Rams, I like them to outpace the Bucs too. Give me the Pack and those points, 36-29. Moving on, I have something of a rule, one that I stick pretty closely to. It's that the Chiefs, when faced with a smaller spread, like 2.5, when they're at home, just don't overthink things. Kansas City has been the best team in the NFL all year long. They were my Super Bowl pick at the start of the playoffs, and they can just score at will. 2.5 points is nothing for them. It's like asking Larry Legend to hit a free throw. It's pretty much going to happen. Obviously, watch the status of Patrick Mahomes, but Andy Reid didn't seem worried early in the week, so I'm not worried. I really do like this Bills crew, and I think that they'll be a force in the conference for years to come, but the Chiefs are just too strong across the board. Give me KC at home to cover those 3 and head to another Super Bowl, 31-25.
On the topic of head coaches, I want to switch gears a little bit, talk about the dysfunction in Houston, a team that's still without a head coach. Let's start with the Andre Johnson tweet. He was very blunt, said the organization is known for wasting players' careers. What's wrong with this organization in your guys' mind? Mike, I'll start with you.
It's bad decision making at the top. That's where it came from. Cal McNair is the guy. He's the one who decided to give over power to Bill O'Brien to make him the GM and the head coach. And we saw poor decision making there out of Bill O'Brien as he continued to give away draft picks and eat up their cap space and everything like that, and then give away top level talent like Jadeveon Clowney and DeAndre Hopkins, stripping their team down of game-changing players and then leaving them without draft picks and without money. Then this guy that they brought in, Jack Easterby, was a character coach. Supposedly, somehow he elevates himself up to be the top executive. And this is really an undesirable situation. He hired Nick Caserio from New England, who he was familiar with. They go back to the Patriot. Well, that kid has got a really big job that a mess he's got to clean up, because he came there probably because he wanted to build a team around Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson don't want to be there now. So he's got to somehow try to find a way to convince Deshaun Watson, hey, you got to trust me on this. I want to build this team around you. And he's the guy who called Eric Bieniemy, had the interview with him, had the interview with Leslie Frazier once he was in place. I don't know if he can fix this thing, but you still have to wonder if you can trust what's up top, because you see owners make bad decisions again and again and again. It doesn't matter who they bring in as their talent evaluator, who they bring in as their head coach. They still find a way to run it into the ground. And they're very much at a position where just last year, they won the first round playoff game, and you thought, okay, they're heading somewhere. They were leading the Kansas City Chiefs 24-0 at the start of the second quarter, and they collapsed and lost. They gave up 40-something points unanswered, lost by 20 points. We should have known right then something's bad, some bad mojo with this franchise, because they haven't been right since. And now, instead of taking another step forward off of the playoff win last year, they are a team that is just in shambles.
Has Deshaun Watson played his last game for the Houston Texans, or can this be saved? What do you guys think?
I do not think he has, because he's all they've got. And I think Caserio will sit down to him and be like, look, what do I have to do to make this work? I think, from talking to somebody close to Deshaun, he didn't think that it was unsalvageable. He thought, look, they've got some time. This is what they have to do basically to get this thing right. So there's a chance. Is it a strong chance? I don't know, but the door is not slammed just yet.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, because how stupid can they be? I mean, we know they're stupid enough to turn their franchise over to somebody who doesn't have that level of experience. But yeah, you're right. Deshaun Watson is the guy, because if you get rid of Deshaun Watson, then what are you doing? You're trying to find a franchise quarterback. Yeah. So you have to salvage that. So hopefully, from all those years of working with Bill Belichick, Caserio will understand that. But by the same token, why is Tom Brady in Tampa Bay and not still in New England? Because there was a breakdown in the chemistry between Belichick and Brady. I think that is something to really, keep in mind, to put it in a context when you think about what the Texans can or can't do with Deshaun Watson.
Welcome back to Weekly Pulse. In the past year, the NFL has said they want to promote racial equality, as you both know. Roger Goodell came out, said Black Lives Matter. Messages have been on helmets, end zones all season long. Yet, when it comes to minority representation at the highest levels, it seems like those messages have fallen on deaf ears. And one fact I actually wanted to bring up was of the 18 head coaching positions filled in the past 3 years, only one has gone to a Black coach. So with that, I'm here with Mike Jones and Jarrett Bell to discuss the current state of the league in regards to minority representation at the head coach and GM level in the NFL. So starting with you, JB, how would you describe the current hiring cycle for head coaches and GMs in the NFL?
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing when you think about all of the attention and the focus and the conversation that has been directed in this regard, and all of the efforts, by the way, from the NFL and people who don't have the authority to hire for the team. So it really still comes back to the teams, the ownership, and what they do. I think the thing that really kind of strikes me is that with all of the efforts, that the process for some of these teams, even though they've brought in candidates or interviewed them via Zoom, it still doesn't feel like there have been, the legitimate opportunities for Eric Bieniemy to, still be on the fence, if you will. And I know the Chiefs are in the playoffs. You would have thought that he would have had a lot more buzz about him as the top guy. But then you see Urban Meyer get hired. You see Dan Campbell come out of nowhere to get hired by the Detroit Lions. And I think we're going to, when this thing all shakes down, we're still going to have a lot of questions about what processes teams are using to make those decisions.
One bright spot is the New York Jets hiring of Robert Saleh as their head coach, becoming the first ever Lebanese American head coach in the NFL. And he's currently the fourth active minority head coach in the league. Mike, how is this hire being seen across the league, and are there any incentives in place for the Niners?
Yeah, well, the Niners will get some. They'll get the 2 third-round picks for having a minority coach that was promoted up and out of their organization. That, developmental incentive that the league gave to teams. But, around the league, there's not a whole lot of excitement because, one coach being hired doesn't really undo, decades of wrongdoing. A lot of these coaches were looking at this from guys I've been talking to are like, yep, this is what we expected. They were worried even after the league changed the Rooney Rule to expand the requirements and giving these incentives. They felt like, it's just going to lead to more token interviews. They felt like it was just for appearances, and they know that the teams are going to just go ahead and stick with the same thing they've been doing, hiring the guys they want to. There's a lot of frustration and guys kind of throwing up their hands saying, here we go again. We've worked hard. I know in the league office, they're like, look, we highlighted the pipeline. We put these guys in front of you. The coaches are like, we got in the work. A guy like Raheem Morris even coached on the defensive side of the ball, went to the offensive side of the ball, so that way he could become more well-rounded. Did a very good job with not a lot to work with in Atlanta as their interim head coach. No sniffs. And so there's just a lot of frustration even still. Leslie
Frazier hadn't had an interview in 3 years, not 1, not 2, 3 years. And so that really that contrast just really illustrates the level of frustration that Mike alluded to. And I hear it every day from so many people. I talked to Bruce Arians, the Bucs coach, and he says that right now he's really ticked off that Byron Leftwich, you mentioned Raheem Morris not getting a sniff, Byron Leftwich, same deal. Not even a phone call, not even an interview. And so, there's a lot more that needs to be done in this regard. And I'm not optimistic that it's going to just happen voluntarily with the NFL teams.
Welcome back to Weekly Pulse. This Saturday, the biggest names in UFC will return to the Octagon for a lightweight showdown. Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier first fought in September 2014, with McGregor getting a first-round TKO victory. MMA Junkie is here to break down their predictions for the matchup and what it could mean for the winner.
It is the first pay-per-view of the year, UFC 257. It's lined up for this weekend, and we touched on it. The biggest star in the sport, Conor McGregor. He's lined up for a rematch against Dustin Poirier. This was done, of course, in less than 2 minutes the first time around, but that's been several years. It's a different weight class. Guys have matured. It's a lot different fight now, I think. So what do we see happening here? Let's give us some keys to victory and how this thing plays out. We'll put 3 minutes on the clock to give you a little time to break it down. Danny Segura, let's start with you.
So I think it's very interesting. I recently spoke to Dustin Poirier's coach, Mike Brown, and he actually had a lot of interesting points to say. You can check that out on MMAJunkie.com. And one of them was being how much durable Dustin Poirier is at 145. 155, then 145. Remember, the first time they fought, it was, 10 pounds south at featherweight. And I got to agree with that. I mean, we saw him, have some rough fights at 145 pounds. And ever since he went up to 155, he's just had amazing performances, and he's been hard to put away. And he's fought some killers. Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker. I mean, you just got to go down the list. So I don't think Conor McGregor is going to get him out that easy, keeping that in mind. And also, look, a big thing that was going into that fight was that Conor McGregor at that time in his rise, it was a very quick rise at featherweight and also a very unknown. People weren't really sure what they were getting themselves into when getting ready for a Conor McGregor fight. And at this point, they know exactly what to face when meet with the challenge of Conor McGregor. So I think it's a much more different situation, and I expect a much more durable Poirier, smarter, more experienced, more poised. I don't know. I'm going with Poirier in this one.
Interesting. All right. So leaning on the durability there, I think that's certainly going to play in. Familiarity as well, right? I mean, you're used to the circus that Conor McGregor brings surrounding him. So George, what do you think? Is this a different fight? How's this going to play out?
Very different. Both guys are very much more experienced, especially Dustin Poirier. He's been through a lot and then accomplished one of his goals, which was to be a world champion. But basically, it's something you're going to hear a lot this week. You got to get out of that first round. I mean, Conor McGregor retains a lot of power regardless of what round you're in. That guy's just got heavy hands naturally. However, it does diminish a little bit as it goes on, just like any other fighter. So that's the key, is not letting this guy get off to a quick start. Yeah, in that early round, that's when Conor's throwing his kicks. That's when he's throwing his hardest. He's got to get out of that first round and just take him into deeper waters, like you'll always hear.
Yeah, avoid that big left hand, right? That's the one that puts everybody out. Mike, what do you think? Is Dustin Poirier going to be able to do that, though? That is a dangerous weapon, or is this Conor McGregor's night?
Yeah, well, I think Dustin knows what he needs to do. I just had the chance to speak with him out here not that long ago. You can watch that interview on our YouTube and go to MMA Junkie. And he's very aware that Conor has serious power early in this fight, and he wants a blood and guts type of fight. That was his quote. He knows that the longer it goes, the more advantageous it is in his favor. He's shown that he can go 5 rounds hard and really keep up that pace and even pick up the pace later in the fight. Conor McGregor hasn't really showed that. The Nate Diaz fight was really the only indication, the second one, and some people could say that he should have lost that decision. So I think the longer this goes, it's Poirier's big chance, and if it ends early, Conor McGregor is almost certainly going to be the one getting his hand raised.
Boy, I can't wait to see it. I mean, we like to see Conor McGregor do the spectacular, right? But a test between these two guys, a real extended battle, sure would be a lot of fun to watch. So we'll see how it goes.
Welcome back to Weekly Pulse. On January 17th, 2020, USA Today Sports got the opportunity to sit down with NBA legend Kobe Bryant to discuss where he was and where he was hoping to go in his post-playing career.
Yeah.
Got you. Because when you're ready, I'm ready.
Just 9 days later, Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others died in a helicopter accident, leaving the sports world stunned. We caught up with the reporters who covered his career and his untimely death. Here are their stories.
The interview came to be very organically. Obviously I had covered Kobe for numerous years. One thing that I had pitched very early on before the season even started was to do something on how he's been transitioning from his post-NBA career to everything else, because he was doing a lot.
Being in the industry that I'm in now, it wasn't something that was thought of, or like winning an Oscar wasn't something that was like, oh, I want to win an Oscar one day, And so to be able to transition and be able to do these sorts of things it's at the top of the list.
Of course, I was excited. Any chance to interview Kobe is always a really exciting opportunity. I grew up in Los Angeles. Any chance I had to see a Lakers game or interview Kobe was always such a great experience. So it was something I was definitely looking forward to.
I remember getting a message from Sandy, and she said, "Yo, we get to photograph Kobe in a week." And so I look at her and I'm like, "Really? We get to photograph Kobe Bryant?" She was like, "Yes, get ready."
It was a 45-minute sit-down interview about things that don't have much to do with the NBA. It was about what his next steps were. And it was a whole different lens and chapter of his life that was just really cool to get into.
The biggest challenge now is finding creatives that want to come in and add to the world that we're building, and then bringing them in and making more stories. So it's finding the people that want to do that.
It was really great to see that he was really cherishing this time with his family. He pointed out that he was excited to take the girls to school and pick them up. He was excited to see Gigi's games and coach and be a part of that. He just was really enjoying being a dad.
Listen, it's been great, man. I got a chance to, spend so much time with my family and, really largely control my own schedule. So I get the chance to see them a lot, and be with Nani and Gigi and BB and Coco and my wife. You just have more time with family.
In the moment when I was photographing Kobe, I was thinking, don't mess anything up, make sure everything's on point, make sure you can get all the diversity of images that you're set here to get. I knew the magnitude of who I was photographing and what this meant for the readers that were gonna see this. So I was locked in. And I remember though, right when he left, I looked at Sandy and I was like, man, I can't believe what just happened. I can't believe we just did this. I mean, it never crossed my mind that the photo I took of Kobe Bryant would be one of the last photos ever taken of him.
Kobe, I appreciate the time. It was a pleasure to
You got it.
dig through everything here.
Oh, man.
I'm Robert Hanishiro, USA Today senior staff photographer based in Los Angeles. I'm probably one of only maybe a handful of photographers that actually covered Kobe from his very first game to his last game. It happened on the same day as the Grammy Awards. Literally a buzz went through the crowd. The place was pretty much full. And I think for about 10 minutes, among the photographers, we didn't believe it. And this, it's especially somebody that young. Having covered Kobe that long, for 20 years, a sadness came over, everybody, not just me and the other photographers. And then when word got out that he was with his daughter, I mean, that was just, compounding, the emotion that you had, that not only was Kobe gone, but also one of his children.
The reporter that I was with was like, "What happened?" And I told her, and then all of a sudden you just hear all these dings going off down the red carpet. So I contact Harrison, who was not covering the Grammys that day, and he was making a beeline to LA Live.
It took a lot of strength for me to complete that day and get all of the photos that I needed to get. I remember starting to shoot as fans came in to start morning for Kobe, and about 30 minutes into photographing these makeshift memorials, on a big Jumbotron screen, there was a huge picture of Kobe and Gigi that was displayed. Everyone saw it, and just everyone just felt Kobe and felt Gigi in this space and felt the magnitude of why we were all here.
I'll forever be haunted with knowing where I was when I heard the news, and then trying to, get through that day of doing my job, where I went to the crash site in Calabasas to talk to mourning Kobe fans, and then going to the sheriff's press conference to get information on that, and then going back to the crash site to talk to more Kobe fans, and then making a long drive back home, and then trying to have the energy and the right tone to craft a column. I mean, it was a very long day, to say the least.
You just cry inside about it every time you think about it. I mean, just thinking about it now, I get very emotional about it, because, it's just such a tragedy. I mean, he had a lot of life to give, and he was doing a lot of great things post NBA career. It's sad when anybody passes away, but with somebody that's almost like a 20-year-old, a 20-year-old friend, it hurts even more. I've done a lot of things in Staples Center, and the memorial for Kobe and Gianna were certainly very different than all of that. I'm getting emotional thinking about it now, but when Vanessa left the stage and had to walk down a set of stairs, basically in the dark, you just saw this figure come out of nowhere. You really even couldn't see who it was. I mean, I'm looking through this thing through like an 800 millimeter lens, and you see this hand reach out, to touch her arm to help guide her down the stairs, and all of a sudden you realize it's Michael Jordan. Of all the things that happened during that event, to me, something as simple as Michael Jordan helping Vanessa, guiding Vanessa down a darkened staircase, I still think about it and see that in my mind right now, almost a year later. Any photographer, any journalist that has covered somebody as long as Kobe played in Los Angeles, it just strikes you as, one part of the city passed away with him because he was so beloved. And then number two, I think everybody lost something.
Sometimes you can't control that wall that us as journalists put up of emotion between ourselves and our subjects.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay that we're sad. We're humans. It doesn't stop me from doing my job. But I was able to get through it, but it was hard.
When you see somebody, a player, or anybody, whether it's a player or a politician or a celebrity or, the guy that pours your coffee every morning for 10 years, you can't help but become somewhat, involved with them in terms of, saying hi and following what they do, and, behind your journalism wall, you become invested in athletes, and it's just the way it is.
That does it for this week's episode of Weekly Pulse. Every day we are inching closer and closer to the big game. Sunday's championship matchups will determine which teams are heading to the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady will face off at Lambeau Field, while the Chiefs and Bills will meet in Kansas City. Can't wait to see who wins. Until next week, I'm Mackenzie Salmon. Thanks for watching. Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more from USA Today Sports.